Sing, O muses! Sing of Smash Fiction, the podcast where we pit characters against one another in a battle of might or cunning or being required reading in high school and college. And see who will emerge the victor this day, muses of nonsense. Sing of Odysseus versus Beowulf versus Cuchulainn versus Sir Lancelot. Plock. Pickwick the Dodo settled next to the space heater in the office of Thursday Next, jurisfiction agent, who was drowning in a stack of reports. Bookworld had been quiet for the briefest of moments. No one trying to turn Pride and Prejudice into a dating show. No one murdering their way through Jane Eyre. No plays melting together to form abominations like The Merry Wives of Elsinore, a play that takes a long time to get funny, and when it does, everyone dies.
Oh, I love Shakespeare humor.
But now, in front of her stood the Monkey King, gold circlet on his head, wearing brightly colored, if travel-stained robes. In a row behind him stood Odysseus, with piercing eyes and skin darkened from the sun. Then Beowulf, broad-shouldered, his blonde hair braided back. Beside him stood the youthful, dark-haired Cuchulainn. At the end was Lancelot, standing straight and looking excruciatingly handsome. Thursday sighed. So what exactly happened? Nothing! I just visited some of my fellow mythic heroes, as a good neighbor should, Monkey shrugged. Lancelot scoffed. Hardly. He intimated that we were inept. He called into question our strength. Beowulf flexed a single peck menacingly. I simply pointed out that their stories seemed uninspired. Easy. Not even a single impregnating river in any of their stories. If you're not constantly afraid of becoming pregnant every time you go near a body of water, are you truly an epic hero? Odysseus stepped forward. Pregnancy rivers aside, we have all, for reasons wise or not, agreed to Monkey's challenge. Thursday glared at Monkey. What the hell is this? What challenge? He bet we'd never get Tripitaka to Vulture Peak. I say if Monkey and his friends could do it, even one of us would be plenty to guard that thick-headed monk, said Cuchulainn. I would be plenty. I'm not so sure about you. You haven't even a beard yet, Cuchulainn, Beowulf pointed out. Cuchulainn growled and picked up his heavy ash common. But Odysseus moved between them. Let's not. We've all got our strengths, and it's not as though any of you have as much experience as I do surviving dangerous journeys. Come now, Odysseus. Lancelot lifted a perfect brow. You don't have to pretend as though your bad fortune and foolish decisions are something to be proud of. Odysseus' jaw tightened. You are the expert on bad decisions, are you not? Thursday cleared her throat before the room was filled with larger-than-life heroes doing larger-than-life damage to her belongings. Fine. You all take Tripitaka this one time. Monkey, after this, you, Pigsy, and Sandy are back at it. Stay out of their books from now on. The four heroes looked at one another in simmering distaste. They would keep that precious idiot Tripitaka alive and look good doing it, gods damn it. And if they happened to overshadow one another on the way, well, so much the better. They filed out, leaving Monkey and Thursday. Thursday pinched the bridge of her nose. Does this have anything to do with you getting denied that vacation request? I can't believe you would accuse the Monkey King of using trickery to get his way. That doesn't sound like me at all. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to be in Lady Chatterley's lover. For reasons. Thursday picked up the footnoter phone on her desk. Andrew DeSanto, I'm sorry to ask this. We need somebody to watch the D.H. Lawrence section real closely, and I'm even sorrier for anything you see while you're watching. Monkey is going on, quote, vacation. Andrew groaned. No, not the scene in the woods. Advocates, your four heroes have signed up for the journey to the west, and will be taking the places of Monkey, Pigsy, and Sandy as traveling companions to Tripitaka, a monk with a real lack of self-preservation. Your character must show that they are the most competent badass of the group, able to deal with magical nonsense, seduction attempts, escapes, enemies, and the treacherous journey itself. Which character will emerge victorious? I don't know. I like all these disaster boys too much to advocate for one of them. So I, Megan Bob, will be your fond judge this week. Representing Odysseus is Dan Mulcairn.
Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end by 3 mythologically stupid chucklefucks.
Yeah! Representing Cuchulainn is Miles Schneiderman.
So I was going to do the whole Irish accent thing.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes?
But even though I'm, super good at it, I wanted to push myself a little bit more instead of, like resting on my laurels, So what I'll be doing instead for this entire show is flawlessly imitating an Irish person doing a fantastic American accent.
Oh, wow.
Please hold your applause until after I've won this match, y'all.
Nice. Representing Sir Lancelot is Claire Mulcairn.
In all arguments, rebuttals, and lightning rounds, both for life and death, she passed all other advocates, and at no time was she ever overcome, unless it were by treason or enchantment.
I mean, I'll be treason for you if you want.
Representing Beowulf is Matthias Tautimes.
I am Ripper, Terror, Slasher, Gouger, Bullshitter. I am the teeth in the darkness, the rampant yelling in the night. Mine is deception and pandering and logical fallacies. I am Beowulf.
Totally thought you were going to say Batman at the end there.
Oh, so good. In order to determine who went first this week, I brought each of the advocates before Anubis to test which of them was the purest of heart by weighing their actual heart against a feather. Miles immediately argued that this was a purely symbolic form of measurement and therefore not admissible in Smash Fiction Court, which pissed Anubis off. Matthias refused to hand over his heart because you do need it for writing and stuff, which was reasonable, but again, did not make for a happy puppy god. Dan tried to cram in a bunch of good deeds last minute by leaving nice YouTube comments, which got him about on par with the feather. But Claire was the only one who thought to bring a squeaky toy and managed to weigh down the feather side while Anubis was distracted, and so she will be going first, followed by Dan, followed by Matthias, followed by Miles. Lancelot, I really liked First Night, and I know I'll like your opening arguments. I just want you to know I put a heart emoji at the end of that. I can't say it out loud, but I did put it.
We can hear it.
I felt the heart emoji. Every boy band has its archetypes. There's the sporty one, the brainy one, the bad boy. So that's why I'm pleased to inform you that tonight I am representing everyone's favorite archetype, the pretty boy, whose first name is Lance, and whose last name evokes water. No, not that one. The other one. The Knight of the Cart, the Flower of Knights, Sir Lancelot du Lac. I know what you're thinking. Lancelot has a last name? That's right. Du Lac, which means of the lake. Which lake, you ask? The lake. As in the one with the lady, because Lancelot was stolen from his parents as a child and raised in a magical otherworldly realm by the Lady of the Lake to be the greatest knight who ever lived. So sorry, Excalibur, but you're only the second best present that Arthur ever received from this particular body of water. First up, let's talk martial prowess. Lancelot is simply unparalleled, defeating not only entire armies of mortals single-handedly, but also slaying the few supernatural creatures that he comes across in his journeys quite easily. Like that time when he fought 2 giants at once. And you know what? I can tell you the entirety of that encounter right here because Lancelot meets, fights, and kills 2 giants in 3 sentences. Quote, "Anon withal came there upon him 2 great giants, well armed all save the heads, with 2 horrible clubs in their hands. Sir Lancelot put his shield afore him and put the stroke away of one giant, and with his sword he clave his head asunder. When his fellow saw that, he ran away as if he were wood, for fear of the horrible strokes, and Lancelot after him with all his might, and smote him on the shoulder, and clave him to the navel." I know that all of you have killed monsters before, but usually you build a whole chapter around it. Neither Beowulf nor Odysseus nor Cuchulainn has ever casually killed 2 giant monsters as an aside while on the way to do something else. While fighting an army of knights in tight formation, quote, "he thrust with his spear in the thickest of the press, and there he smote down with one spear 5 knights, and of 4 of them he brake their backs." Defeating 5 knights in one spear thrust? I had a really weird revelation as I was reading this part, that Lancelot fights like an anime character. Listen to this account of him competing in a jousting tournament. Quote, Sir Lancelot gat a great spear in his hand, and he bare down to the earth 16 knights. And then he gat another spear and smote down 12 knights. And then the knights of the king of Northgalis would joust no more. I am now retroactively upset at everyone who said that they didn't like later editions of Dungeons & Dragons because it was too much like anime and not enough like, quote, classic fantasy literature. I just want to yell at all of them. Have you seen Lancelot? He's basically One Punch Man. All right, now that his fighting credentials have been established, let's talk about another aspect of Lancelot. I know, I did this in the last match. I really didn't want to talk about it again, but there's just no way to talk about Lancelot without this coming up. You want to talk about a character that's going to lend themselves to epic stories? Everyone Lancelot meets wants to bone him all the time. It's ridiculous. Not enough time to list them all, but there's the time 4 evil sorceress queens, including goddamn Morgan Le Fay, made an alliance to kidnap Lancelot and then force him to marry one of them of his choice. Then there was the time that he was going after a magical relic in a place called the Chapel Perilous, and it turns out that the whole chapel was an elaborate trap created by a sorceress named Helois, who was again trying to trick Lancelot into marrying her. After she failed to trick him and he left her behind, she died of heartbreak. There's a lot more. I don't have time to list them all, but here's just one, probably my favorite. There was an evil knight named Sir Turquine whose brother was killed by a knight of the Round Table, and so Turquine swore vengeance and went around dueling any knight he came across, and once he defeated them, he locked them in his dungeon. By the time he met Lancelot, he had 64 knights in his dungeon. This dude was 64-0. So he fights Lancelot, and like halfway through the fight, he's so stunned by how awesome of a fighter Lancelot is that he says, Hold thy hand for a while, and tell me what I shall ask thee. For thy love I will deliver all the prisoners that I have, that is 64, so thou wilt tell me thy name. And thou and I, we will be fellows together, and never to fail thee while that I live.
Aww.
Have you ever in your life heard a story where the hero's fighting the big bad, a dude he's never met before, and the bad guy just gives up halfway through the fight because he's fallen in love with the hero and wants to change his life and reform?
X-Men.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
I
fair
don't
enough.
care how many monsters the rest of you have defeated. None of you can match that. If Tripitaka himself doesn't fall for Lancelot, the many, many people of all genders that do during this journey will certainly make for a compelling epic. And finally, the thing that sets Lancelot most definitively above the other 3 heroes gathered here today is his complete and humble dedication to the philosophy of chivalry. Unlike everyone else here, Lancelot doesn't just do great things, he also does good things. Wherever there is injustice, Lancelot will correct it simply because it is the right thing to do. When he hears of a knight who has forced himself upon women, he says, He doth shame unto the order of knighthood, and contrary unto his oath, it is a pity that he liveth. And then he goes and kills the dude. And unlike most of his competitors, Lancelot isn't prideful, he isn't prone to fits of rage, and he isn't a braggart who's in love with his own legend. He's a servant of the helpless, and because he keeps his head down and just works on doing good without worrying about a reward or acclaim, he has an enormous list of decades of epic adventures, far more numerous than any other competitor here today. I didn't even have time to talk about how an assassin who was fully armed and armored attacked him one time while he was naked, and Lancelot kicked his ass with a tree branch. If anything is going to make Tripitaka's writing brush twitch with anticipation, it's going to be this soft-spoken, honorable, melancholy Captain America meets anime protagonist who is constantly doing dope shit, like leaping through the air to behead giants, who's constantly getting into steamy foyer relationships, and who definitely has the best hair of the group.
Oh man, I feel pandered to, but really delighted. Oh, all right, Odysseus. Time to water the wine, burn the offerings, and present your opening argument to the gods.
The question we face today is, who is most likely to have their deeds immortalized after taking Tripitaka from China to India? Well, let's look at our source material. Which of the original crew of Journey to the West is the one who most consistently steals the spotlight, who has spawned more movies, anime, and video games all by himself than the rest of the cast put together? Who was so popular that, when the work was translated to English, the translation was named after him? That person, of course, is Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. He's beloved because he's charming, clever, a great warrior who's also skilled with magic, who always manages to stay several steps ahead of friend and foe alike. If this match was about which of the original 4 disciples in Journey to the West would be glorified once the adventure was said and done, we know who would win because he's already won this match in real life. Friends, Greeks, demigods, Odysseus is the Monkey King of this group. Odysseus is consistently portrayed as being the cleverest, most cunning, and wiliest character in all of Greek mythology, including the gods of Olympus themselves. During the Trojan War, he's easily the smartest and most level-headed person on the battlefield. Everyone knows how the Greeks won the Trojan War, right? The whole thing with the soldiers hidden inside the Trojan horse? Guess whose plan that was? And guess who led those soldiers to victory once they were inside the walls of Troy? When Odysseus runs into a problem, he comes up with these incredibly intricate, multi-layered plans instantly. He and his men get trapped in the Cyclops Polyphemus' cave, and the first thing Odysseus does is tell Polyphemus that his name is Nobody. It's only later, after he's secured Polyphemus' trust, gotten the Cyclops blackout drunk, and put out his eye, that we realize why he came up with the name that he did. Polyphemus starts calling for help, saying that, quote, "Nobody has blinded me." The other Cyclopes are understandably confused and decide that Polyphemus' most pressing issue is needing someone to sit down and explain what does and does not constitute a crisis situation, but they have no interest in going to help him. But the story of the Cyclops also shows that Odysseus is great at improvising, even when unexpected things crop up mid-plan. He was planning on sneaking out along with Polyphemus' sheep, but didn't anticipate the blinded Cyclops running his hands along the top of his flock. So, in the time between when the first sheep leaves the cave to when the last sheep leaves, Odysseus has tied himself and all his men to the underside of the sheep, allowing them to escape scot-free. But look, arguing that Odysseus is smarter than Beowulf, Cuchulainn, or Lancelot is like arguing that the Millennium Falcon is a better ship than the Serenity. Not worth going into extensively. Instead, I want to at least touch on the many, many other abilities that the bad boy from Ithaca displays in his stories. To start with, he's physically very powerful. He receives the arms and armor of Achilles, crafted by none other than the forge god Hephaestus, because the Greeks and Trojans alike agree that Odysseus is the bravest and greatest warrior in the Trojan War. While Odysseus is away, his wife Penelope is courted by 108 suitors who are after her husband's estate. Penelope eventually decides to hold an archery competition. Whoever can use Odysseus' bow to shoot an arrow through a dozen axe heads will win her hand in marriage. Not a single suitor, not one of the 108, are able to even string the bow. Then Odysseus shows up in disguise, wins the archery competition, and then kills every last suitor there. He's also massively charming. At one point during the Trojan War, he strands Philoctetes on an island, but then later ends up needing Philoctetes' poison arrows to win the war. Philoctetes is understandably furious with Odysseus, but Odysseus still manages to convince him to give him those arrows. I mean, talk about having to negotiate with a hostile audience. And of course, Odysseus is the hero with the greatest experience with magic, and the one best suited to dealing with it. When his men are turned to swine by the witch goddess Circe, the same spell doesn't work on Odysseus, as he had used a special herb which made him immune to her magic. Furthermore, Odysseus is the only one here who has actually performed magic, summoning the spirit of the legendary prophet Tiresias. Knowing which herbs make you immune to magic, and being able to summon up someone who can tell you the future, seems like pretty handy talents to pull out when dealing with the shenanigans around every corner of Journey to the West. Odysseus has had to deal with the nastiest corners of the insanely, unfairly lethal setting of Greek mythology. And anytime we see him going up against some new crazy threat, we see that he always prepares himself and learns about the threat beforehand. Even when something unexpected happens, his improvisational reflexes are lightning fast, and he immediately comes up with a way through. It's how he got past the Sirens, it's how he slipped past Scylla and Charybdis, it's how he knows not to eat the lotuses or slaughter Helios' calves. Similarly, he's not going to drink from the river that makes you pregnant, he's gonna know the best way through a dangerous volcanic landscape, he'll know how to use every magic fan or enchanted sword they come across, he's gonna know that the fearsome demon is actually a goldfish in disguise. It's like he shelled out the extra $19.95 for the Prima Strategy Guide for Journey to the West. Odysseus is brilliant, charming, versatile, and physically powerful. When this journey is over, it'll be a miracle if any retellings of this story even mention the other three.
So thank you for that. And now Beowulf. Lo, we spear Danes in days of old heard the glory of the tribal kings. Tell us about the glory of Beowulf.
The trip to retrieve the sutras is filled with perils both demonic and geographical, sometimes demonically geographical. So, it makes sense that if you want to protect someone against monsters, you hire someone who's literally here to kill your monster. If you want to impress Tripitaka, I mean, let's face it, killing things, then telling everyone about killing those things, is basically what Beowulf does. So let's run over his credentials, shall we, with a keen eye for both practicality and impressiveness. Number 1, swam a race for a week straight in full plate armor. If you need someone who has endurance, you need to look no further. This is like if you combined Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt, but then injected them with the combined testosterone of Chuck Norris and He-Man. Oh, and while in that race, he just happened to slay 9 freaking sea monsters. Not only can he go, but he can kick ass while in the water. And forgive me, it's been a while since I read Journey to the West, but aren't there a fair amount of river demons to be fought? Monsters dead? Tripitaka now clearly questioning his vow of celibacy. Point the second. Killed the hell out of Grendel. Naked. Now, Grendel was a murder machine. He was making daily visits to the mead hall of Hrothgar and slaying handfuls of thanes each time. And these are men who saw those murders, thought about it, and still continued to party because they're motherfucking Nords. And when men like these need help, who did they call? Our boy Beowulf. Knowing Grendel didn't wear armor, he shed his, and knowing that Grendel fought unarmed, he did likewise, and he ripped the damn creature's arm off. Now, you may be asking, why naked? Well, obviously to be fair, but also doesn't it make a better story? Tripitaka can't argue about Beowulf being unfair to the beast when he fights naked, plus there's another checkbox for the monk who is definitely not forgetting that night. The glistening sweat beading off of Beowulf's naked chest, mixing with the splatters of blood and viscera that just barely obscure his... Oh, I'm sorry, where was I?
No, go on!
Yes. Grendel's mom. Now, it's not dwelled upon much, but he doesn't just walk straight up to her, he tracks her through a myriad of hellish environments, leading a crew of ass-kicking yeets. Now, granted, they're really just there to witness his glory, but still, he leads them. And after mountains and cliffs and all manners of nonsense, he arrives at the lake of mother effin' monsters. A dead sea serpent or two later, and he's ready to take the plunge, quite literally. Donning his awesome crush-proof armor and stylish helmet, he swims to the bottom of the lake, a feat that takes him all damned day. So just remember, ladies, and Tripitaka, Beowulf can hold his breath a long-ass time. Upon reaching the bottom, he wrestles Grendel's mother like it's an episode of Lucha Underground. Alas, mommy cannot be...
I can't tell if you're like playing that up or if that was genuine, Miles.
No, she's probably a member of the reptile tribe. Anyway, go on.
Yay!
Alas, mommy cannot be hurt by mortal weapons, so Beowulf assesses his surroundings, realizes she has a hoarding problem, and claims a giant sword and beheads her. Then, just for good measure, he beheads the corpse of Grendel so he can give it as a present to Hrothgar. So considerate! Imagine the souvenirs he'll bring back for Tripitaka. They can open it together under a cherry blossom tree while Beowulf tells him of the thrilling tale of the pig demon he skewered or the water dragon he punched to death. Oh, Beowulf senpai. Last, but certainly not least, the dragon. Old man Beowulf, looking for one more fight like a Viking Ric Flair, challenges a dragon to single combat. When his sword breaks, he freaking wrestles the dragon. Flames, claws, and even getting bit in the neck, they're just minor inconveniences. Bleeding out is not a concern for Beowulf. Now, with a little assistance, he murders the dragon and then tragically falls. Not to the bite itself, but because this is a frickin' venomous dragon. Who could have seen that coming? But even as he lay dying, he has enough badass left in him to demand to see the treasure he just won from said dragon. So what does this mean? Well, it means the worst case scenario for Beowulf is at the end of the journey. He falls, defending Tripitaka. He wins, but he lies dying in the monk's arms, held tight in one last embrace. He wills his treasure to Tripitaka before the pair bid a final goodbye. Oh. But because this is Journey to the West, he doesn't just die, he becomes a mother effin' bodhisattva. Oh, spoiler alert for a 16th century Chinese novel.
And also just like the concept of Buddhism in general.
Oh, yes.
Spoilers for Buddhism.
Matthias, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I would just like to say the phrase "lucha underwater." Okay, we can continue now.
Oh, so good. It's mermaids, but lucha. I want this. Okay, so my pressing desires aside, Cuchulainn, you win on the hurling pitch. Show 'em you can win in opening arguments.
So I'm guessing that a good portion of our listeners are currently in the same boat I was in before I started researching Cuchulainn, which is a boat christened the HMS Who the Fuck is Cuchulainn, and whose figurehead is in the shape of a giant shrug emoji. So for those of you who are wondering why this little Irish guy you've never heard of, because it never came up in 12th grade English class, has a chance in a contest of legendary heroes you've been reading about since you were 5 years old, well, he's a demigod. Let's just get that out of the way. I know that Lancelot was raised by the Lady of the Lake, and Odysseus is like Hermes' great-grandson or whatever, because it's fucking Greek mythology. But Cuchulainn is the actual son of an actual god by the name of Luge, I think. I'm gonna fuck up all the Irish mythological names in this, just so you guys know. Who, in addition to being a god, is also an awesome warrior hero king, just like Cuchulainn. So, yeah, demigod, deal with it. But what does that mean? I can hear you asking, as you always do.
Thank you.
But what does that mean?
I'm pretty sure it means different things for different people, but in Cuchulainn's case, it means that he can hold off an entire army single-handedly by challenging every member of that army in single combat one at a time, sometimes more than one at a time because motherfuckers like cheating, for a month without stopping. That includes fighting 3 different iterations of the goddess Morgan, after which she's like, yeah, this guy's pretty cool. He beat the shit out of me. I think I should be friends with him and heal him and stuff. And then, after he was done fighting everyone in single combat one at a time, sometimes more than one at a time, because motherfuckers like cheating, for a month, he went to sleep, his actual god dad healed his wounds, and when he woke up, he got extraordinarily pissed off and turned into a giant rage monster, killing hundreds of enemies in a single day. So, what does being a demigod mean for Cuchulainn? If this one story is any indication, it means he's Thor, if Thor were also the Hulk. Answer. This is what happens when Thor, but also the Hulk, gets dropped into this glory-seeking supergroup of an adventuring party, playing out the classic adventure Journey to the West, presumably written by Gary Gygax. What is be the best at everything all the time, Alex? Ding, ding, ding. Let's start with the journey aspect of this quest, which you might think Cuchulainn wouldn't automatically excel at because he pretty much sticks to Ireland, but which is actually a piece of cake frosted with the entrails of all who stand before him and hold the fucking fondant, thank you. This guy might hang out on an island, but he crisscrosses that island a ridiculous number of times, back and forth, traveling everywhere, meeting new and interesting people, and having sex with their daughters. He's on the move so much that the villains of a standard Cuchulainn story usually just have to stand around waiting for him to wander along if they're looking to fuck up his day. As for fighting monsters and demons, well, the aforementioned solo army defeat is just one instance of Cuchulainn being an unbelievable badass. As a child, he joins his local youth militia one day, just because he feels like it, and beats up the other kids when they try to keep him out. That's before he accidentally shows up to a party at the mansion that he wasn't invited to, and Smithers unleashes the hounds, but the hound in question gets fucking murdered, because Cuchulainn's a badass, and he becomes the mansion's guard in its place. He later receives extensive battle training from, Skahaks?
Skaha.
It's like skahach.
A legendary Scottish warrior woman and martial arts instructor who also gives him Guy Bolg? Or something? The magic barbed spear that provides the awesome power of insta-kill. Combat will not be an issue. As for keeping the ladies away from his charge, well, to be perfectly honest, no offense to Tripitaka or fellow practitioners of chick magnetry, Lancelot and Odysseus, but the ladies are going to be looking this away. Every goddamn woman in Irish mythology has eyes for Cuchulainn because of his bravery and heroism, sure, but also because of his otherworldly beauty, which is another thing you get when you're a fucking demigod. And as for being able to deal with magic, do not make me laugh. Cuchulainn has defeated shape-shifting wizards who hide their life forces inside apples inside the stomachs of salmon. When have y'all ever dealt with something that stupidly magic and prevailed? That's another part of being a demigod, guys. I hate to keep bringing it up, but Cuchulainn just lives life on a whole different level than the rest of these characters, regularly coming into contact with dangerous magic as part of his daily routine. Because again, he himself is a berserker warrior king whose greatest enemy was the inspiration for the character of Queen Mab. That's who you need to be to take Cuchulainn down, and Journey to the West doesn't have enough down south to get the job done.
Ooh.
Whether he's laying the smackdown on the supernatural giants known as Fomorians, showing his bravery by willingly allowing someone he just decapitated to decapitate him in turn, or cutting a magic stone in half because it refused to magically declare his foster son the High King of Ireland, Cuchulainn is made for great deeds, and why wouldn't he be? It was prophesied, after all, that Cuchulainn would win everlasting fame as a warrior. But that only happened because Cuchulainn overheard the prophecy and actively fulfilled its requirements. Cuchulainn does come into this match with the natural advantages given him by his parentage, but he also fights for what he wants. And what he wants is glory. I dare any of you to try and keep it from him.
He took us on a journey. Fed us some real salmon apples. It was great. Those were some truly epic opening arguments. And now for rebuttals. Lancelot, time to engage in some verbal jousting. Medieval humor. Okay, so everybody gets to say one thing to Lancelot, and Lancelot get to smack him down.
I just want to talk real quick about the whole thing about how Lancelot's a good person who definitely doesn't commit adultery or anything like that, which is why he can't actually go after the Holy Grail. But regardless of that, doing good things like not being a braggart, which is what you said, and just basically acting out of altruism, it's not really what gets you, glory, which is why the only thing anyone ever actually remembers about Lancelot is the fact that he banged Guinevere and started the civil war that destroyed Arthur's kingdom.
So first of all, if we're talking about being immortalized in a story, I think it just makes Lancelot a more interesting person. It's not the fact that he does this sort of thing willy-nilly, that he has these constant moral failings. It's that he has this love for Guinevere that haunts him, and it always hangs over him. And most of the time, people know about it, and he just kind of deals with it, and it just drives him to be better because he just wants to be great to please her. But even after everything that happens between him and Arthur, they're still friendly towards one another, and they still consider each other brothers and stuff like that. It just sort of makes him a more epic character. I think that if I was a writer and there was a bunch of people who were always talking about how awesome they were and making these big displays of how awesome they were, and then there was another guy who seems just as impressive as the rest of them, but does it in a way where he's not asking for as much recognition, there's people who seek out fame and there's people who are just beacons that naturally attract people. And I think that Lancelot's the latter, and if I was a writer, that's the person who I'd want to venerate as the greatest hero of the group.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Intelligence, maybe not the best factor for him, because, we all know he boinked Guinevere, and that's whatever, but that would have been one thing if he just, not done anything stupid, I don't know, painting a giant mural that depicted his entire adulterous affair with the king's wife. That's not exactly a level-headed decision.
He can be kind of melodramatic at times. He can be a little flowery in the vein of those kind of nights. I don't really see that being a huge character failing. He wears his emotions on his sleeves. He's not good at keeping secrets. He's just kind of a transparent person. He meets random people out in the world and they know that he loves Guinevere. He's not good at hiding stuff, but beyond that, I don't think that he's super dumb. At his core, he wants to be such an honest person that he's just kind of transparent at times. And I'll give that to you. But once again, I don't necessarily see that being a huge problem in this quest when we're fighting demons and stuff. He's just going to kill demons.
I kind of feel like he's one of those people that holds himself to such a high standard that he has this giant list of things that he considers to be flaws and moral failings that no one else does. And when he feels guilty about something, which is pretty much all the time, by the way, his usual response is to run off into the woods for months or go on these highly impractical quests for lost drinkware. It's just he's just going to be going on all these side quests away from the main group.
So what you're saying is that, as I said, the whole point I'm getting apart is he feels this weight of all of his flaws. He's haunted by his love for Guinevere and all of the ways that he's not as good of a knight as he wants to be. But that just means that he's going to do crazy stuff like go on quests to get the freaking Holy Grail. That's just cool. Similar to what you're talking about with Beowulf, kind of sometimes taking on more of weight that is necessary in the quest to kind of play it in hard mode. Lancelot's going to go out of his way to right wrongs and do side quests that the other people aren't going to do, and small ones where there's not a lot of glory in it, but things that are just right because he just wants to fix his soul and atone and be better. So I just think that the weight that he has is just going to make him do greater things.
Odysseus, sweet talk your way out of these rebuttals.
As you might imagine, like most Greek heroes, Odysseus has a tragic flaw. In his case, of course, it's pride. Odysseus thinks he's super great and likes to talk about it a lot. Like, there's the time where after he defeats Polyphemus and he leaves and he, like, got away with it. And he's like, he did that whole perfect plan about, yeah, I'm no one. And so people are like, who hurt you? He's like, no one hurt me. And then he's leaving. He's like, hey, you tell everybody it was Odysseus that got you. And then Polyphemus is like, cool. Hey, Dad. Hey, Poseidon. This guy hurt me and his name's not Noah. It's Odysseus. Can you, like, fuck him up for, like, the rest of his life? And he's like, sure. So I'm just saying, Odysseus doesn't always make the best decisions. He does have his ego, which gets in the way.
I'll grant you that to some extent, but we need to remember 2 important points of context for that. So first of all, in the entire decade-long saga that is the Odyssey, this is literally the only time that Odysseus does something like this. That's what makes it so memorable, is it's the one time that Odysseus screws up and gives into his pride. And that's at the beginning. Like, we don't see him do that for the rest of the story. And then secondly, as you mentioned, like, this act earned Odysseus the wrath of the god of the ocean while Odysseus was sailing on the ocean, and the best Poseidon could do is delay him. Poseidon has the ultimate home field advantage here, and Odysseus gets past every single challenge that Poseidon and everyone else in the Mediterranean Sea can throw at him.
It doesn't matter because if y'all recall the reason that Odysseus's quest is a decade long, Journey to the West, I understand, Bob, there is a great deal of sexy times happening.
Yeah, I mean, not always to you necessarily,
right.
Tripitaka, he's very sought after.
The thing is that literally the second a woman enters the picture, we're never gonna see Odysseus again. Because twice in the Odyssey, and again, the Odyssey is not the beginning of Odysseus' story. The Iliad, he's all over that too, being arrogant fuck. But twice in the Odyssey, he gets seduced by a woman and hangs out in places for years. He does it with Circe. He hangs out with Circe's place for an entire year, and his men have to drag him out of there, and he's with Calypso for 7 years!
Couple of points there. First of all, your point about Circe, he is with his men. This is the first time since they left Troy that they've been able to, like, actually relax and have real food and drink for a while. So I feel like this is more of him ensuring that he and his men have the morale that they need in order to get all the way back to Ithaca. When it comes to Calypso, Calypso is a sea goddess. I mean, I get that Odysseus is, like, hyper competent. He's really, really skilled, great at improvising. The last thing he wants to do, though, is piss off a sea goddess when he's so close to getting home. I feel like this is more of him being extremely selective about when he leaves and when he stays. He realizes that if he splits on Calypso too early, he's never getting home.
Let's talk about death toll here, because we talk about how Odysseus has experience with these long adventures, but really he has experience with long journeys the same way the Sticky Bandits have experience robbing the McAllister household. Every obstacle in the Odyssey ends with, and half his remaining men were eaten alive. He only gets past Scylla because it's already too busy chomping on his men to eat more of them. That's Zap Brannigan level of planning. So tell me, how is that man going to preserve Tripitaka's life?
First of all, let's look at the sort of men he's sailing with. If it hadn't been for the idiocy of Odysseus's men, their trip back to Ithaca would have been a 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour. Because these guys open the bag of winds that Aeolus gave them and blow them to the other side of the Mediterranean Sea, and then they go and eat the calves of Helios after Odysseus explicitly tells them not to. So, first of all, these men getting killed are their own damn fault. And secondly, the fact that the monsters kill so many people and not Odysseus is a testament to how good Odysseus is at outthinking threats and at getting out of the way of threats and at defeating threats. Odysseus is in a very dangerous situation. His men are idiots, and yet Odysseus survives. That just means that you guys might be in more danger, but Odysseus is going to come out of this just fine.
Beowulf, time to tread water and rebuttals. Hopefully no sea monsters.
One issue I want to bring up with Beowulf is it's sometimes a little bit difficult because the writing's kind of vague to calibrate just how powerful the monsters are that he's defeating. There are some interpretations that him telling the story of the sea monsters is him just telling a tall tale to make himself sound cool. And then in terms of Grendel and his mom, exactly how powerful they all isn't really clear. They may not be that much more powerful than normal humans. They may just be kind of big, strong, monstery people. And then when he fights the dragon, as you point out, he does die at the end and has 12 people fighting alongside him. And, Wiglaf's the guy who ends up like cutting the dragon's belly open so that he can defeat it. So like, how many of these feats are really that impressive? It's kind of hard to say.
Okay, so there's a couple points to address. One, of those 12 men that aided him, they all left except Wiglaf. So it was an old man and a little, more or less like a 17-year-old kid fighting this dragon. What I'm hearing here is that, like, he tells good stories that get remembered. And I think that's like half the challenge here, isn't it? That Tripitaka, is supposed to be duly impressed by this.
But I mean, he's also going to have to step up and actually do shit this time.
There's no proof that he didn't do the things. You're kind of putting out there that maybe he didn't, maybe these were things. He had the Yeats follow him to witness his glory. He had people witness the stuff he did.
Matthias, you were talking about how he decides to fight Grendel naked and unarmed. He fights Grendel's mother in her own lair, giving her home field advantage. He goes and fights a dragon, like, almost by himself. These are all impressive, and they're very, very stupid, which explains why he gets killed in episode 3 of Beowulf. Like, the main difference between Beowulf and Odysseus, Beowulf does impressive things that are really stupid, and Odysseus does impressive things that are insanely clever and effective.
As someone who's actually who's read Journey to the West, it's full of insane stuff that's actually pretty stupid. That's kind of like the hallmark of that novel. I see this as fitting in perfectly for that. I don't see what the problem is. He came out of each one of those smelling like roses, save for the last one. That one, he just smelled like, a badass rose that was wilting, but still.
I just don't think that Beowulf has the experience for this, man. Like Dan said, he dies in episode 3 because there's literally the only things Beowulf ever did was one time he killed Grendel and his mom, and then 50 years went by. And then he and a dragon killed each other. He's got a pretty decent lifetime record just by the percentage. He's 2-0-1, would you say? 2 wins and a tie? That's fine, but that's not when you calculate, scores and stuff. That's really it's a tiny sample size. He's just a regular dude.
A regular dude that survived all that stuff. You're saying, one, it's heavily implied he was already well decorated. He was the leader of the Storm Yeats when he came in. He was badass enough and people had heard of his tales well enough that they called him to address the Grendel problem. So clearly he already had tales being told of him.
Why didn't he already have a magic sword, Matthias? That's all I'm saying.
Because he goes... Have you seen how many swords he goes through? He kills the hell out of everything and he breaks every sword he uses because he's busy using it to stab the hell out of something.
Cuchulainn. Do it for the fame and also all those ladies.
So, Cuchulainn's real powerful. We know that. He's real strong. But I think there's a chance he might be as much of a liability to the group as he is a help. His whole berserker rage thing means that he can't always control what he's doing. And there's the time when, his long-lost son shows up and is like, hey, let's... And then he's like, oh, God, he got killed. And then he died because he's like, oh, dang, I killed my son. So just saying,
yeah, he's got a temper, I'll admit to it, but, first of all, his son, he obviously didn't know it was his son before he killed him. He only knew it was his son, with the kid's dying breath. So, sorry about that. Should have been better at announcing yourself. But beyond that...
Is that victim blaming I'm hearing?
Oh my god.
Irish mythological victim blaming. But beyond that, I hear what you're saying about the rage thing, but... When he did the rage in the big battle over the cow, his army had already joined the fight, and they weren't that fucked up by him. He mainly focused on the enemy.
They weren't that.
He mainly focused on the enemy, and previously in his life, when he, went out in a rage and killed a bunch, some enemies, and he came back, they were able to calm him down. There's a very tried and true method to calm Cuchulainn down, which, as I understand it, is to show him a bunch of boobs, which he will avoid looking at, and then you put him in a barrel full of water to cool him down.
I'm not going to say that Irish Incredible Hulk can't, rip the hell out of anything that steps in front of him. But half of this challenge is impressing Tripitaka. And that's a man who values virtue and honor. This is a man who, while on his quest, whose end goal was marry Emmer, the girl of his dreams, he forces Aoife, sword at her throat, to bear him a son. The same son that he later murdered, but the point is, hashtag yes all Cuchulainns. I don't think that's a mentality that's going to impress Tripitaka.
I think Cuchulainn, at the very least, is guaranteed to make an impression. When Tripitaka goes back to his buddies, back to fucking Sun Wukong, and is like, dude, you'll never fucking believe these 4 idiots that were trying to escort me through Journey to the West. When he goes back there, what's the first thing you think he's going to talk about? You think he's going to talk about, oh yeah, there were these guys who totally shared the same values as me, and they were very honorable, and we bonded over tea.
He's a monk. That's what he does. He actively shuns those kind of terrible things.
That's fine, but what is he going to talk about? What is he going to write down in his book? Maybe the dude who broke all the rules because he's a loose cannon, but he gets results. Maybe he's going to talk about the dude who can't be fucking tamed by society, can't be tamed by demons or monsters or anything else, can't be tamed by any of these outside forces, and maybe, just maybe, deep down in Tripitaka's soul, there's a part of him that he doesn't want to admit, that he doesn't talk about at parties, that admires that about Cuchulainn.
You know, Miles, Cuchulainn really reminds me of Achilles, who in the Iliad is presented as a foil to Odysseus, because Achilles is brave and foolish and emotional, and then Odysseus, exercises a great deal of good judgment and restraint and reason. And guess what? Odysseus leaves the Trojan War alive and gets to have a ton more adventures that get him all that much more fame and glory, and Achilles isn't so lucky. And something tells me that this same thing is going to happen here.
Cuchulainn isn't Achilles and this ain't the Trojan War. I don't know what you want me to say. The fact that this character reminds you of some other douchebag you knew back in the day before he got his dumbass killed because he couldn't be bothered to wear something over his heel, even though he knew it was his only weakness, that has no bearing on this match, because Cuchulainn is really a lot better than Achilles at basically everything. So, yeah, Achilles is a hothead. He did get killed because, again, for some reason he went into battle without shoes on, but there is no logical interpolation by which you can say, oh, because Cuchulainn vaguely reminds me of Achilles, that means that Cuchulainn is going to fall into the same traps, fall into the same fate as Achilles does. It just doesn't make any sense. They're completely different characters, and one is objectively better.
The journey ends when you get to Vulture Peak, and it's not really what you thought it would be like. It's much louder and with more flashing lights and the smell of sweat. Come to think of it, where's Tripitaka? Why does it say Exquisite Strip Club? Oh no, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're in Tampa, Florida.
No!
It's not important how you got here.
That's far more
What's
dangerous.
important is that it's the lightning round.
Oh, curse you, lightning round!
You find yourself thrust into the world of male exotic dancing. And with no money in your pockets, no way to figure out how you're getting back to your own world, you're stuck inside the script of Magic Mike. You've got to make a living somehow, and there's always money in the banana hammock.
Oh, that's so good.
Advocates, please tell me what you plan to wear in the stripping persona you'll be adopting. What's your signature stripping move, and what do you call it? What song do you strip to? And bonus points for any insights on your crowd patter. How do you woo those wallets? As is tradition in the lightning round, we snake it back, so whoever went last is now first. Which means, Cuchulainn, tell me about how you strip, I guess.
You know, when Cuchulainn first got to the strip club, he got interviewed, and was telling the people there a little bit about himself. Obviously, they wanted him to strip because he's so pretty. But he was telling them about all his deeds, and for whatever reason, what stuck in these guys' minds was the whole thing where he fought a war by himself over a cow. And he was just never able to convince them after that he wasn't a cowboy. The stripper persona that the Hound of Cullen ends up adopting is Hound Dog.
Yeah!
He wears a sexy cowboy outfit. Complete with Stetson hat. I really want to say that it's bright green, but that feels racist, so it's not. The song that he strips to is a remastered version of a popular modern country song. In this case, Save a Horse, Ride Cuchulainn. As far as a signature stripping move, it's called the size of a sea monster.
Yes!
Jeez.
And it relates to how his spear is made from the bones of sea monsters. He also kind of wants to stick it to Lancelot a little bit because he feels like Lancelot's his biggest competition in this show. So the move is basically like he does a bridge, like bending over backwards, like with just a fully erect cock and just thrusting in the air, like the fucking Excalibur rising from the goddamn lake.
God!
And
Whosoever grabbeth this sword.
Is gonna get ejected from the club.
And also like a sea monster rising out of the water, you know what I mean? That's the sort of symbolism we're going for here.
That's
Very
really
subtle, but I caught it.
And if anybody gives him any shit while he's dancing, he stabs him with a spear, and they get like barbed metal going into every point of their body. And he reminds the audience that the spear is not the only thing that's barbed, and keep their hands to themselves, please and thank you.
Nice.
Oh, no.
That was horrifying and delightful, just like most things in Irish mythology. Thank you. Beowulf. I don't even know what's going to happen.
So, of course, because they make him like take on a persona, when he comes out, he is Grendel's daddy.
Oh, damn.
I like it.
He wears his armor, a nice sexy, like a not his armor, but like a nice cloth version, so that when he strips it off, it doesn't like wang someone in the head as he flings it out there. But his whole thing is being like, oh, it's just not fair if I'm in the armor. So he's just like hurling it off and whatnot. And of course, he's dancing to "I'm Sexy and I Know It" because that's what he does. He tells you everything you need to know about him. And so yeah, he gets out there, and as he's going at it, you just see him get up on one of the people, of course, no hands, they got to keep back, as he lets them know that he is stripper, teaser, dancer, the bulge in the darkness. Mine is sexiness and lust and bad decisions. I am Beowulf. I mean, Grendel's daddy.
All right, Odysseus. Show us all why Penelope didn't give you up.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and get your dollars ready as we welcome to the stage Grease Lightning.
Oh my god, you're a genius, Dan!
And yes, he is indeed wearing a leftover costume from the film 300, as well as the leftover body oil from that very same movie. And,
no one can wear that much body oil. How dare you?
He is warming things up. He has lashed himself to the strip pole, leaving himself at the mercy of the sirens in the audience.
Oh my god.
And now he appears to be going around asking if anyone wants to see his one-eyed giant.
Oh my god!
Wow.
And in case you are wondering, yes, that song you are hearing is in fact The Odyssey by Symphony X, and that song is 24 minutes long. So he's going to be on stage for a while, but that doesn't mean you should give any less generously. And I see that it is time for his signature move, the archery competition. He has turned away from the audience, he has lifted up his war skirt, and revealed that he has an axe head tattooed on each of his butt cheeks. And he is now challenging the audience to fire their dollars through the axe heads. This is
Wow.
This is truly a legendary mythological performance on this stage, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my god! Lancelot, bring it home.
When Lancelot first started stripping, the name that he started off going under was Lance Charmstrong.
Oh!
But then he learned about some of the bad stuff that he was involved in. It was very dishonorable behavior. He couldn't be associated with that. So he recently changed his name. He's now Sir Dancelot.
Oh!
When he actually starts, there's a little trap door in the stage that opens up, and like water bubbles up from it, and it's like a little lake, and the stage gets all moist, and then he rises up from the water. There's some fans in the corners. They start blowing flower petals all throughout because he is, of course, the flower of the knights. And he emerges from the water wearing the sexiest thing of all, a full suit of knight armor. Because he is also a very shy and private person. He actually does strip it off, but because you know how many layers are involved, it does take him good 45 minutes to get it all off. All the layers, the armor plating, the straps after you've done, the chainmail that has to be lifted off. And in the end, he does end up in just a tiny little chainmail thong. His signature move is, of course, a powerful thrust that can defeat a dozen women at once. His signature song that is playing is, of course, Lady Gaga's Marry the Night.
Oh no.
If he ever, gets just one-on-one with a lady, in, a private dance or whatever, he actually will open his heart up and he'll tell him the story about, he'll show him his tattoo that he has of his girl, Gwen, and how, it's so sad he can't be with her, and he thinks about her, and he just cries, and he gets sad, and yeah, that always melts the hearts and opens the wallets.
Oh my god. This was everything I wanted it to be, and so much more horrifying than I thought it would be. But I just want you all to know that I don't regret the time we spent together.
I'm pretty sure there are some classics students listening that are regretting a lot of things right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. With that tidbit of wisdom, I leave you to go and deliberate. So talk amongst yourselves.
Lamort Arthur's awesome. It kicks ass. It
You are
was so great.
full of shit. What are you talking about? It's so bad.
What did you love about it?
Oh, just reading, like I said, it was ridiculous anime bullshit. It was just so dramatic. And
I also don't like anime, so maybe that's why
true.
I hate it. There's an entire book series that you can buy on Amazon for Kindle download for $1 each, which is this guy who wrote an entire series rewriting Lamort Arthur in conventional language and explaining why certain parts of it are weird and who Mallory was, and basically to say so all of Lot and all his fucks just bent over their asses, shit like that. So
what's it called?
I don't remember the name of the series, but the first one is called something about a sword in a stone.
Dan and I had a fun conversation that we realized that these 4 characters map perfectly to the core 4 Avengers.
Perfectly.
'Cause-
1 to
Really?
1.
Because we got
Odysseus is Iron Man, clearly.
Yep, Odysseus is Iron Man because he's the the clever one, and of course, and some of the big mistakes that he has to deal with later are his own doing.
Sure.
Lancelot's Captain America because he carries the heavy burden and he wants to be good and all noble and chivalrous and stuff. Beowulf is of course Thor. He's the big kind of macho hunk who's just kicks ass and is
He
all
likes challenging
cool.
monsters to battle.
And of course, Cuchullainn's the Hulk. He even
yeah.
has the sun's getting real low moment.
These boobs are getting real out.
But he's also Thor.
He's not as much Thor as Beowulf is Thor.
Beowulf at no point holds a line of enemies by slaying them one at a time, which is what Cuchulainn does. I would say Beowulf's more like Hawkeye.
No,
Okay, now it's getting personal. And can I say, when I got the option and I realized Liz wasn't going to be part of this, I felt like it was really on me to do well as Beowulf, as the man that shouts his own name, strips down.
Yeah,
you definitely were channeling some Liz this time. It was very good.
I can hear it.
Yeah, I wanted to do her proud, and I hope I at least, had a modicum of Liz in there.
Beowulf
somewhere.
is such a Liz character. I never even thought of that.
What was funny to me about researching this match is realizing how much of my core ideas of Odysseus and Lancelot come from late 90s, early 2000s TV miniseries.
Was Odysseus ever in Hercules?
No, but there was a great Odyssey miniseries in the late 90s.
I remember that.
Odysseus was played by Armand Assante. It has all these ridiculously famous people in it. I can't name them right now, but it's real fucking good. And then with Lancelot's case, man, I was all about that Sam Neill Merlin. So
Yeah, I watched that
yeah.
a while ago. I don't remember crap about it. Does Martin Short play a little goblin-y demon
He
guy
plays,
who's telling him about magic?
Frick.
Personally, I'm just shocked that none of you brought up the fact that Odysseus is played by Sean Bean in the Troy movie.
Okay, I have arrived at a decision. I had to balance 2 very difficult things, just badassery and competence on a pretty broad level that would ensure that everybody, or most everybody, certainly you and Tripitaka, get there alive. So I went with Lancelot, actually. I did not expect... No, I never thought... No, okay, I hear you, because I really thought that Odysseus had it in the bag, and it had nothing to do with the strength of your arguments or anybody else's necessarily. It was that it was brought up that Odysseus is very single-minded, and that it might mean that he will absolutely make it, but the people that are with him, because he is so good at being single-minded and such a survivor, it does not guarantee that other people around him will survive.
Yeah, that was actually a really good point in rebuttals, Matthias. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, I just wish my Beowulf senpai had been a little bit better.
Well, Claire, well done. You fooled Bob once again.
God.
Through treason and enchantment.
That's right. Miles, Matthias, you guys are always worthy opponents.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
always happy to be on a show, whether
hate
with
all of
or
you.
against you.
I hate all of you.
Time for the epic kit thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There's a boat now. I don't know where it's gonna go. It's gonna be a long trip, a long kit thanks. So, first of all, thank you to Matthias for running another surprise party at a con and having like great turnout, right?
It was so good.
Oh gosh, we gave away over $200 worth of stuff.
Oh my
the people there were
gosh.
awesome. We did Saboten
Yeah,
Con.
Saboten Con up in Phoenix. And it was Matthias and Sharon and I. It was great.
I just want to put this out there. We had people dying in the crowd laughing. I had at least a few people say that was like their favorite part of the con.
Oh, that's great.
Aw.
And so I wanted to put that out there to you guys, that made this, made it a game in the first place. Thank you for letting me take that to other people. They loved it.
I'm really glad to hear it, dude. And it sounds like you've been doing a great job with it. Keep on going. One of these days, I will do what I can to attend.
We're going to do it one more time coming up in November 2nd at Tucson Comic-Con. If I may point out, one of the panelists that's going to be helping us out for the next one is actually Vander Turner, so someone from the...
Oh, yay!
Nice.
Hey, Vander! Thank you. I'm hoping maybe one day we could do it at PodCon since it's such a hit.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Write your congressional representatives, aka the people at PodCon. Let them know you want to see a surprise party panel, and I will chair that shit.
Let them know
Oh, my.
you think Smash Fiction is a great podcast because the creators of PodCon are like some of my favorite podcasters and really big names.
Yeah,
So that'd be
I will
great.
say that the vast majority of Smash Fic hosts will be at PodCon again this year, or
Yeah.
this coming year in
More than
January.
last year.
Yeah, more hosts than showed up last time. Liz is going to be there.
New
Yeah.
hosts, Liz.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys
Descending
want to
from
meet
space.
Liz, come to PodCon.
I mean, that's why I'm going to try and go, because I just want to know if Liz is real.
So over to Twitter. Thank you to Vander Turner, Sky Erdl, Andrew Young, Jeffrick Present, Jake the Jake, Lake Jake. Nailed it. Deadline Dirk, Matias Tatimes, Decade Fan, Karider Hazama, Robert Ramsey, Cosplay Fiend, Cosplay Devotee, Florian, Icon Jade, Shadow of Merwick, and Meowingly. Over to Tumbles, thank you to Ultra Anonymous Angel, Ink the Cryptid, Secretly a Skeleton, Pissy Britches, great name.
Yeah.
Oob Zero Sleepy Tired, same. Jeep Rhyme, Creepy David Bowie, Every Zig 314, and Meowingly again. Over to Facebook, thank you to Tom Groh, Robert Ramsey, Jeffrey Ketchum, and Sharon Schneiderman. Thank you guys, you're all so great.
And we also wanted to thank Andrew DeSanto, who is a metafictional assistant, Bob? Is that?
A jurisfiction agent.
Oh, jurisfiction agent. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, a prized position to be sure, and one that Andrew got because he is a patron of ours over at patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast, as many of you have become, and therefore have been incorporated into our storyline, get a bunch of bonus content, all sorts of good stuff. Some of that stuff includes voting on matches if you are a patron of a certain tier or higher. This match in particular was voted on by our patrons in order to bring it to life. And it was originally suggested to us by David Spearman quite some time ago. And we've been wanting to do this ever since. And it is because of our patrons that we were finally able to do so. So thank you to all of them. Thank you to David. Thank you to Andrew. Thank you to just everyone, you guys.
Just the world, y'all.
Yeah.
No, you guys
And thank
are
you to
lovely.
Matthias for joining us
Yeah.
here, for running Surprise
Yeah.
Party, for
Thank you,
always being
Matthias.
a great person. You're just awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Matthias, before we go, is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to plug?
I just want to plug the same thing I've done the last couple of times. My novel, The Paladin, is finally headed off to some agents thanks to the pitch war competition that's going on. So I've got my website, matthiastautimus.com, where I keep a daily blog of what I'm writing and thoughts and everything like that. And if you want to read the first 3 chapters of my novel, which, like I said, is finally in front of some agents, then swing over and you can read the first 3 chapters there.
Awesome. So excited for you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Smash Fiction. We hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we bring you Collaboratory.
Smash Fiction is produced by Dan Mulcairn, with logo design by Claire Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme song, Hitman.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Smash Fiction is made possible thanks to our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast. Please consider donating as little as $1 each month. It helps us keep the show going. And we have great rewards and extra content for those who help us out.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
You're never more than like 2 generations removed from Zeus.
All right.
Oh my god, so true.
It's like the 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
That's
with
right.
gods.
Oftentimes on multiple sides of your family tree.
Yeah.
You're never, like you're never more than 6 feet from a rat. Like you're never more than 6 feet from Zeus's dick.
6 degrees of Zeus's penis. Anyway.
Yeah.
My great uncle was a swan. I don't know what was up with that.
Oh.